COVID-19 has taken a terrifying turn in India. India is struggling to come to grips with the unfolding health and economic crisis just days after it had seemed to declare premature victory against the virus and lower its guard. The situation is frightening and unlike anything I've seen before. It is slipping away, and key to bringing it under control again is to get the vaccination strategy right. Otherwise, the cost of the pandemic, both in terms of lives and livelihoods lost, would be unmanageable. The government has announced that it is going to lift state controls and open up the procurement and administration of vaccines substantially, but the plans that have been announced are sketchy and vague and have already drawn a lot of criticism. Vaccine manufacturers are being accused of overpricing and profiteering. Not all of this criticism is correct, but that does not mean that everything is right with this strategy. Ideally, the government should bear full cost and should fully subsidize the manufacturers, but that's not happening. Serum Institute of India has said in a media statement that for the next 2 months it will scale up its vaccine production with the funds that it has received from the Government of India for advance orders. One half of its capacities will now be in service of the Government of India's vaccination program, and the remaining 50% of the supplies will go to state governments and private hospitals. On pricing, it is said that following the Government of India's directives, it will provide vaccines to state governments at Rs 400 per dose and to private hospitals at Rs 600 per dose. The original concessional price of Rs 150 per dose is likely to be retained for the pending order from the Government of India. The company maintains that its prices are lower than vaccines in other countries, but that has drawn some criticism also. Many people have challenged this claim. Business houses had announced that they would procure doses for their employees and administer those, but the company has said that it cannot independently supply vaccines to individual corporate entities. Corporate and private individuals will have to access the vaccines through state governments or private hospitals. The vaccines will also not immediately be sold in the market for just anyone to go and buy. That the company expects would take about 4 to 5 months. My guest on the Everyday Economics podcast today is the very charming Professor Martha Lahiri. He's Professor of Economics at University of British Columbia. I asked him if India's COVID vaccination procurement and differential pricing policies are good enough to end the health and economic crisis quickly. Thank you, Professor Lahiri, for coming to the Everyday Economics podcast to talk about the pricing policy of vaccinations for the third vaccination phase just announced by the Government of India. What is the objective of this vaccination drive? And is this pricing policy approach going to deliver on the goals of this vaccination phase 3 drive?
Well, thanks for having me on the program. Let me start by saying that vaccine pricing is not easy. I mean, because there are all kinds of issues associated with both R&D that goes into developing it, and then there are the externalities associated with public health, which imply that if you start charging everybody covering the average cost, not the marginal cost of production, but the average cost, it's just going to get so high that you'll have a bunch of people who will not sign up to get vaccinated because their willingness to pay is not going to be high enough. And as a result, you have a public health emergency. So then the issue becomes about how do you balance it? How do you balance the need of guaranteeing public health while also incentivizing the producers and allowing them to recoup the cost? And nobody's in it for charity. I mean, extreme events like these, clearly a lot of manufacturers said that they were going to supply at cost and so on. It's not clear that they are, but at least a lot of them did say it. But in general, it's not a sustainable business practice to sort of expect people to kind of work off charity. So that is the tricky bit. So tiered pricing has been, a fairly well traveled path in vaccine pricing, where you look across the world. I mean, the same vaccine sells at different prices in different countries, and part of that reflects the fact that some of the poorer countries are not the ability to pay is much lower, and so consequently, the world is integrated enough that you want them to be vaccinated. The willingness to pay and the ability to pay in the richer countries is much higher. And so having a tiered pricing approach allows you to sort of cross subsidize, that you kind of, charge a markup to the guys who are able to pay the higher prices and are willing to pay, and you use the additional amount to subsidize some of the poorer countries, and that allows better than break even for a lot of the. I mean, I'm not talking about price gouging by. Which has also happened in some pharmaceuticals, very well publicized in the US. Leaving aside those extreme cases, as a general pricing rule, this has been something that has been advocated as a way of allowing manufacturers to recover costs and to scale up. Because if you want to scale up, and so this goes to the second part of what you asked, that is this going to allow delivery on the goal of vaccinating more people. So clearly, right now we have supply constraints. I mean, neither is the Serum Institute nor is the Indian, the Bharat, what is Covaxin? I guess that's the name for it. Neither of them have the capacity to meet what we need are about close to about 1.2, 1.3 billion doses, and nobody is anywhere close to doing that. So we need to scale up, and so that scaling up would require either buying extremely expensive Pfizer or Moderna, which are selling for upwards of $15 a dose, or we have to go with trying to scale up these guys. So ordinarily, what would be a sort of an acceptable approach possibly would be that if the government of India is in the thinks that this has to be rolled out to every eligible person, man, woman, and over 16, everybody who is eligible needs to get it, and covers the cost. So it would have to be that they subsidize it. So, Serum still sells it at whatever it's, I mean, so there is an issue. I don't know what their bottom line costing is, but given what this is at an acceptable margin, call it 2%, call it 3%, whatever you want to call it, that, between the price that the government says that I want to sell it at and the cost, the acceptable price, that would have to be picked up by the government. But if the government doesn't want to do that, which clearly they don't. So then it's an issue of trying to negotiate a price. But this creates a huge issue for the producer, because if he's not going to get subsidized, he has to get the money back from someplace. And so you're seeing these things happening now. The Serum and AstraZeneca are selling to South Africa at like $5.25 a dose, when AstraZeneca had made a big statement about $3 is what their price is going to be. So where is that tiered pricing coming from? It's also coming from this idea that somehow upper middle income countries, can be charged a higher price, the poorer guys. So it's the same principle, trying to sort of apply it within a country as opposed to across countries, that you kind of tier the price. There are, India, we keep talking about this middle class and we keep talking about the deep pocket guys. So paying 600 rupees in the private sector, paying 600 rupees, I'm sure lots of people would be willing to pay that in upper middle class urban India. A lot of people in poorer parts, which is the majority, would not be willing to pay that. But that's where the governments come in. What I'm not sure about is what the distinction is between the central government and the state government. Why is that difference being put in? Unless there is some notion that what you just said, that some of these private industries, which are employers who want to vaccinate if they're going to go through the state governments, then maybe, I mean, this is like a somewhat of a private state government interface, and so there's a higher price for that. I don't know if that was the thinking or this is just a response, but I found the whole thing, this distinction ex ante between the state and the federal government, somewhat artificial. But the fact of tiered pricing, that doesn't seem, that is how markets incentivize, production and allow externalities to be dealt with. Poor, lower income groups to be, that's the group that gets through the government at the lower price, at zero actually. For it's the central government that's paying for all of that. And people who are willing to pay, who don't want to wait for that, who can go to the private sector, go pay it and get it back. So get the vaccine right away. So and it provides the seed capital needed to scale up for the producer. And scaling up is extremely important. Without that, we're not going to get anywhere close to vaccinating even half our population in the next year.
There's been a lot of criticism of this pricing policy. I'll just read out some of the things that have been said. Mr. Sitaram Yechuri has pointed out that, for 70 years, India's always had a free universal vaccination program. And that's the same principle that should be applied in this case. And he can't understand why this procurement cannot be done out of the money that was collected from PM CARES. Before you respond to that, could it be that one of the reasons for the center getting a lower price than the state governments is because the center placed pre-orders, however insufficient, but they placed pre-orders because of which they made advance payments to the manufacturer, and that has enabled them to provide vaccines at a slightly lower price? Could that be one reason?
It could be, even though it sounds sounds remarkably low for a government that has not invested a single cent in the development of the vaccine. So the standard story for why sometimes governments are able to negotiate a lower price is if you invested in the R&D process. I mean, or because there's a lot of risk. So who bore the initial risk? So a lot of public entities across the West actually invested. And so in the U.S., it was Moderna was funded significantly. Its initial startup, experiment was funded by the government, and so Moderna prices that the U.S. government is buying is much lower than. I mean, it's not. It's like $19 or $20 is the market price, and they're charging the U.S. government $14. Pfizer was developed in Europe with EU money, so EU is getting a lower price. So, this $2 price that the Indian government has negotiated is really a great deal. I mean, the persuasive powers were, I guess, pretty strong to be able to get that price. But it seems like a fabulous deal.
So they did well on getting that out of the manufacturer. So, universal free vaccination program, do you have any calculation or estimate on what it would cost if that was to be done by the government of India for these vaccines?
No, I haven't actually calculated it, what it would be. I mean, if it were to be free, I mean, you can just look at the 15 to or the 16 to the population above 16 today is what? It's about close to somewhere around 700 million, 800 million, somewhere there, 800 million. I think it's the dependents are, or maybe 900 million, somewhere about there, so some ballpark number. So now you're talking 1.8 billion doses in order to do this. So 1.8 billion times, you say that, okay, if I can negotiate a huge across, I mean, between AstraZeneca, for them to scale up to 1.8 billion through SII is going to take. So it would really require, buying from all different sources, including, I mean, not relying just on one or two. So if you say an average price of, $6 to $7 per dose, which is like Johnson and Johnson, for example, it's $8, or they're charging $10, I think, but it's a one shot. So then it comes down to effectively $5 a dose. So let's say you kind of average across all this fabulous $2 dose, and so let's say a $6. So then now you're talking 1.8 times 6. So it's not a big amount. I mean, I don't know how much the PM CARES fund collected. I mean, I actually don't know. I see some estimates. I don't know how people know these numbers, but 1.8 billion times 6. So we are talking about $12 billion is the cost to do it for everybody who is eligible. If the government of India funds the entire thing, I mean, this is just a back of the envelope thing that I'm doing.
If you compare that with the opportunity cost of having a very severe second wave,
it's huge.
And an economic recession prolonged, would it not be worthwhile to spend this money and make a
totally? I mean, this should be. I agree with you. I mean, because just imagine the disruption of generated by. I mean, just a a 1 quarter disruption we are talking about, $300 billion. Just a 1 quarter disruption, and even if you take it down to 1 month, now you're talking about $100 billion disruption just based on that. 13 billion doesn't look like anything relative to that. I mean, even if it's 15 billion, just the cost benefit ratio is just without doing any sort of detailed math, it just seems like something that I think a lot of Indians would be willing to pay for. Actually, it's not just as a special cess to try and generate something like that. I mean, ultimately, about, let's say, 15 billion is what, about from 2.8 trillion. We're talking to 280 to 28, so 0.5% of GDP, right? I mean, so it's at some level it is not doing it and just sitting tight and not having ordered. I mean, it's just shocking the paucity of vaccine orders that have been put, and just relying on two companies that do not have the ability to produce anywhere near the scale that you require. Just sounds like you've been sitting on your hands and not thinking ahead, not planning ahead. It's like it's bizarre. I don't understand it. I just don't understand it. I mean, I had no idea until I started reading this, that there's just no plans to buy from anywhere. I mean, so what was the plan? That you're going to take 2 years or 3 years to vaccinate based on dribs and drabs of these things going through? It's just bizarre.
There is probably policy paralysis combined with a lot of complacency and a hope that COVID would just go away on its own, or Indians are just immune to viruses. But if you were to make that amount available, let's even say 0.5% of GDP, what would be the best way to make that amount available? Would you say that it can be cut out of some part of the budget, or would you say, although the finance minister has made an allocation, we are not sure why it's not being used? Or would you say, like you said, a cess? Do you think they should impose a new cess or a tax?
I think the Indian state, frankly, the fiscal hole is so big. I don't know where they have the money, because I mean, part of the reason is I'm sure if there was if there was a way, the love for welfare schemes is so high that I'm sure they would have found more money for other things. It's the reason there is none of it is because oil prices have begun to go back up, so therefore, you don't have the sitting excise on due to lower oil prices. So it's become very hard to create soft money to spend on other things. So as a result, I mean, if they can find money by cutting other things, I mean, there's just so much. Our taxes, our spending. I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of elasticity there. I mean, what one can cut ultimately comes down to infrastructure. That's the only thing that you can really, and in good years you ramp up, and in bad years you cut. The rest is sort of, it's really welfare schemes that are very hard to roll back. So, I mean, our subsidies and interest payments and our defense, which is, all of these things are really hard to do much about. So infrastructure is the only thing. So if you had infrastructure plans, you could say, okay, this year we're going to put that in abeyance and we are going to use it to do this. So that's a substitution. The alternative is a cess. I mean, it's a tried and tested thing that the government of India keeps raising almost. I mean, I don't know, I was reading 8% of its revenues are now coming from cess, or probably more. I don't know what the number is, but the cess would be the other one, that saying it's a special one-time, COVID cess that we're going to use. It could, they could sort of, one way of combining both the things I was saying is to, you could suspend one of the cesses that you have, and instead you kind of create another one, which is another way of saying I'm substituting. If they're using the cess to do what they say that they're doing, which is infrastructure, then it's a substitution. So one of those two, or some combination of those things. I mean, 15 billion doesn't sound like, this should have been planned well ahead. Other countries have bought, like, The issue is supply lines are choked up in almost every country that doesn't have its own capacity to produce, but not even having procured access to it is just sounds like almost criminal neglect. I mean, in a situation like this, it's just bizarre.
And I'm thinking, what sort of a signal is going out to investors who the government's always keen to roll out red carpets for? You can have all the tax concessions in the world and you can have all the FDI policies in the world, but if you cannot manage oxygen supplies and if you cannot manage a vaccination program of pre-orders well in time, you're essentially telling investors that we don't know how to do policy making.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Nobody's going to trust you.
Headlines that have been going around for the last 48 to 72 hours just been, I mean, I think if I don't know about India shining or whatever one is thinking of. I mean, this has just put us back. I mean, anybody you talk to in the West or anywhere, I mean, that's the first question everybody's asking: what on earth is going on? I mean, it just seems like the state has, as I said earlier, I mean, we were talking earlier, the state has disappeared. I mean, so this is, in terms of attracting business, a place where the state disappears in management of basic public services is never a great attractive way of attracting anyone. So yeah, no, I mean, the press has been awful, and this is going to take, I mean, just the ravage of this will take a long time to get over. I mean, I think the way things have, I mean, I think even social cohesion is going to get hugely challenged. I mean, I think it already is. I mean, it's amazing the fortitude that people show under extreme stress and duress, but it'll extract a price. I mean, it's just not costless. I mean, for the mental scarring that just the, it's one thing to go through it, but even for those who are not directly affected by it, you cannot but be affected by it mentally because it's all around you. And this is just awful. I mean, for us, expats who are living outside, it's surreal looking at
this. The erosion of trust in state capacity and just the way things are managed. I don't know if you've had the time to look at it, but there's a piece by the chairman of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, Dr. Vivek Debroy, today, in which he's argued that he's quite critical of the pricing policy and procurement policy and pre-orders for vaccinations. Most of the things that you've said, he's also pointed out these gaps. But he also says going forward, he does not see how there's going to be no rationing of vaccinations. He's basically saying there's no getting away from rationing of vaccinations.
No, there will be. I mean, I think he's right. I mean, because this is one of the other things. If you don't have enough, I mean, you're not letting, we don't want. There are two ways in which things get distributed. I mean, the way the market works is either you ration through prices or you ration through direct quantity controls. If you don't have enough and you don't want prices to move, because, if you let prices move, what would happen is all the, supply would, it would just spike to people would be paying 2,000-3,000 rupees if they can and get access to it. Since we don't, that is not the way we're going to go. It's just going to be quantity rationing. People are just going to be waiting. So now is when I think from May 1st, it's 45 and under are going
18 and above.
18 and above are going to become eligible, and that's where the median guy is in India. And so it's going to be. This is where the big rush is going to be, and this is when people are just going to be waiting. Up until now, the older people, I mean, once they got eligible, people were getting it because there weren't that many, so there was still somewhat of a match. And on top of that, we also have this vaccine skepticism, which is the other issue, which I think there is going to be an issue. That will also have to be dealt with, about people being generally a bit I mean, it's not that unheard of, people being afraid of vaccines. I mean, what they
Although
do.
I think what will happen now is that people would go and get the vaccine because if you do not because now it's people are well aware that if you get the vaccine you don't need hospitalization, and hospitalization is expensive. People are having to pay lakhs of rupees. Government hospital beds are not available; they're in short supply. So the best way to avoid that situation is to get a vaccination. So I suspect people will be open to it. Although
Yeah,
we'll get to
maybe
see.
you're right. I mean, so I mean, and clearly, given the scale at which, see, I mean, I think you're probably right, because what will help in this is the fact that the scale of this devastation is just so huge, and it's so publicized that I think it would have really probably scared most people into doing whatever they can to avoid having to run the risk of potentially ending up in hospital or looking for hospital beds and so on. So yeah, probably right. I mean, that the fear factor is probably going to be high enough after this that people will not hesitate, contingent on being offered a vaccine.
Before I end, I just wanted to, get a sense from you on if you were to ask to recommend the government of India, what should be the right pricing policy and what should be the right allocation, quantity-wise allocation policy, since there's no getting away from rationing in the immediate near future. What would your recommendation be? How should they go about it?
I think, well, the pricing policy, as I said, I mean, it's got to be. I don't have anything about against a two-tiered policy. I don't understand this state government versus central government, price difference, what that is all about. But I'm not even sure whether the central government is now saying that they're not going to vaccinate people under 45, or is this because I read somewhere I think maybe it was this announcement by the Congress Party's committee that Chidambaram and Jairam Ramesh, etc. They put out some statement with Rajiv Gandhi saying that the center has not vaccinating people under 45. I haven't seen anything like that, so I think that just seems kind of wrong. But maybe they have. I don't know.
I think in the first day when they announced the third phase, what they said is that the central government will continue to. I'll read it out for you. They said that the central government will continue to, as before, provide free vaccination for essential and priority populations as defined earlier. So that is, I think, population above 45 years. They did say that a detailed guideline is awaited, but this is what they said on the first day. So I think that's what they're responding to.
I mean, I have a feeling. So I mean, it's one thing for the central government to say, "I'm going to vaccinate all these people for zero, for costless." It's quite another for them to say, "I will not vaccinate anybody under 45." So it may be that they want us to charge a price, or the first goal is to people above 45, and then after that. So there seems to be some confusion about this. That I mean, if in particular, if we are saying that it's the state governments that have to now vaccinate people under 45. Then it seems kind of weird to ask the state governments to pay a higher price for those vaccines, which because they're all citizens of India. I mean, it's not clear why people under 45 have to pay a higher price than people, or the state governments that are in charge of vaccinating them have to pay the higher price. So that seems kind of strange. I mean, so I don't know what that is doing, but
could it be ability to pay?
Sorry?
Could it be some notion of ability to pay? If you're young, you're going to be able to earn, and therefore you can pay, something like that, maybe. But would it not have been better for them to actually prioritize the younger people first, because they're the sort of the income earners?
Yeah, so this actually comes back to what I was going to say next, which is on how to allocate whatever they have. I mean, so I think it has to be based on working age. I mean, which are the working age people? And, you have to weight it by the age distribution, such that people who are actually mostly other working groups are the ones who have to get vaccinated first, because these are the people who can't afford to stay at home. These are the people you have to send out. So if that happens to be a pileup in this age group of 25 to 40, that's where states which have bigger shares of these guys, that's where you need to be allocating across states based on that. So there's allocation across states, and there's allocation. I mean, who are your priority groups? And so I think those two things are probably linked, that the distribution of priority groups across states should be the basis on which you prioritize which states and where the vaccine tends to go. So, but it has to be based on, the working age population and the distribution of that. So where is the biggest share of people at which age group in the working age population? Those are their priority groups.
About a year ago, you wrote a piece in the Indian Express saying that there was an opportunity for India to sort of demonstrate the Make in India capability by improving testing capacity, which we didn't have. We did have vaccination basic capacity, which only needed to be expanded. Is it a complete botch-up? You've not followed up your piece, so I'm guessing.
Yeah, no, I mean it is a humbling moment. I mean, I actually, I was written with my friend Urjit Patel, but so both Urjit and I kind of really thought at the time that this possibly was maybe our moment, that we could, something can be made out of this. But who would have thought that this would be the ultimate light being shown at how bad we are or how inept we are at doing things which we're supposedly good at. But yeah, no, you got me. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's
we're all in that boat. We all wrote about these things.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I know. It's hard to not get totally despondent sometimes. I mean, it's you kind of want to think that it can only get better. I mean, you want to feel hopeful, and there are days you feel hopeful, but then there are these moments when you just say that I don't know. I mean, it just looks somewhat hopeless. And right now, I mean, it just seems the scale of this human degradation that's going on. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. And yeah, we've really botched it. I mean, I think that's to say the least. Yeah.
On that note, unfortunately, let me thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. No, this was a pleasure, to chat with you. And please do stay safe. I'm sure you are, but I wish you the best. And
thank you.
Everybody around you to be safe as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.